The most important point is that this attack on Iran has greatly reduced the likelihood of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. It has also constrained China's oil imports, which is likely to have a negative impact on the Chinese economy. Although it is not easy to bring down the North Korean regime all at once, it clearly sent a strong warning to North Korea, and the U.S. government did not miss what it considered the optimal timing for the attack. Recently, there were reports that the U.S. military attacked a small vessel suspected of drug trafficking in the Caribbean and even killed survivors. According to reports from the Washington Post, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth verbally issued a kill them order during the operation. The reports indicate that despite the ship being burned after the airstrike, there were survivors and a second attack was carried out, resulting in the deaths of 2 survivors. This attack was carried out by the U.S., which is known to have beheaded Osama bin Laden, and conducted a secret operation in early 2019 to intercept communications from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, as reported recently. The main points are as follows. The objective of the operation was to install communication interception equipment to gauge Kim's intentions ahead of high-level denuclearization talks between then-President Donald Trump and Chairman Kim. The operation was carried out by SEAL Team 6 members who infiltrated near the North Korean coast using a small submarine, and some landed on the shore. During the operation, an unexpected North Korean civilian vessel presumed to be a clam fishing boat appeared, and fearing detection, the Special Forces members opened fire, resulting in the deaths of 2 to 3 civilians. As a result, the operation was halted and the team members withdrew. This operation was a high-risk mission, requiring direct approval from then-President Trump, and it was kept classified for years without notifying key congressional leaders. After the report came out, President Trump claimed that he had no knowledge of this operation at all. This report was first revealed in a detailed article by the New York Times in September 2025 and is mentioned as one of the darkest and most controversial events in the history of U.S. Then let's dive into this incident from now on. This is about the dangerous balance occurring in the backyard of the United States in 2025, involving Trump, Venezuela's Maduro, drugs, China, Russia, and the recently discovered oil fields in Guyana. Have you ever thought about this? I will calmly weave together these 5 keywords: Venezuelan dictator Maduro, U.S. President Trump, international drug organizations, China and Russia, and the small South American country of Guyana's oil, which may seem like completely different stories, to clarify the invisible geopolitical conflicts happening in the Western Hemisphere. In 2025, why does Trump view Venezuela as a national security issue? Donald Trump's foreign policy philosophy is simple. Is it beneficial to the United States, or is it a threat? To Trump, Venezuela was not just a simple dictatorship. The main routes of drug trafficking into the United States, a symbol of anti-American socialist regimes, a forward base where China and Russia exert influence. These 3 factors combined made it a very uncomfortable presence from the perspective of the United States. Therefore, the Trump administration elevated the Venezuela issue from a diplomatic problem to a security issue, implementing unprecedented measures, such as strong financial sanctions, maritime pressure, and criminal charges, targeting Maduro personally. When the United States attacked Maduro, the frame it used most strongly was not dictator, but head of a drug state. The U.S. Department of Justice claims that Maduro and senior Venezuelan officials are linked to international drug trafficking organizations and has even initiated criminal charges. The key point of this framework is this: creating illegal funds through drugs, using that money to maintain power, ultimately harming American society, meaning it's not just a human rights or democracy issue, but a direct threat to the safety of American citizens. So, was Venezuela originally a drug country? This raises an important question. Was Venezuela like this from the beginning? The answer is no. The Venezuela is the country with the largest oil reserves in the world and was one of the richest countries in Latin America in the past. However, the combination of reckless socialist economic experiments, failures of nationalization policies, rampant corruption among the military and bureaucracy, and strong sanctions from the international community leads to a rapid collapse of the national economy. To survive, the regime increasingly relies on illegal economies, such as drugs, smuggling, and illegal gold mining, instead of legitimate oil revenues. Upon further investigation, the point that concerns the United States. The most is not the drugs themselves. The problem is the structure, where drugs and state power are combined. In Venezuela, the military that manages airports and ports, the Air Force that controls the airspace, and the regime that has taken over the judiciary. All these elements are intertwined in a single system that effectively protects the movement of drugs. Within this structure, the military is loyal to the regime, and the regime maintains power through the loyalty of the military. On the other hand, what kind of relationship do China and Venezuela have? During the regular briefing on December 3rd this year, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian stated that actions like the closure of Venezuelan airspace by the United States violate international norms and infringe upon national sovereignty. Spokesperson Lin Jian firmly rejected any interference in Venezuela's internal affairs under any pretext and urged all relevant parties to maintain Latin America as a zone of peace. China has built strong relationships with several Latin American countries, including Venezuela, as part of a broader strategy to expand its influence in a region long dominated by the United States. President Trump's threats of military action could jeopardize the influence that China has established in the region. Since the presidency of Chavez, Maduro's predecessor, in 1999, China has been an indispensable partner for Venezuela, and President Chavez has ardently supported a multinational international order. Additionally, over the years, China has become a major importer of Venezuelan oil. In 2024, China imported an average of about 268,000 barrels of crude oil per day from Venezuela, and Venezuelan crude oil is often labeled falsely to evade U.S. sanctions, so the actual amount is likely to be even higher. Venezuelan crude oil is a key resource for the Chinese economy, and in recent years, China has been attempting to diversify its natural resources to maintain a global advantage in manufacturing and reduce its dependence on Middle Eastern oil. President Trump's attacks on Venezuela are one way to contain China. Meanwhile, on December 2nd, President Trump told reporters at the White House that he heard Colombia is manufacturing cocaine. He added, "There are cocaine factories in Colombia." Colombian President Gustavo Petro immediately countered on social media, saying, "The U.S. threatening our sovereignty is tantamount to declaring war." However, the likelihood of China militarily intervening to protect Latin American countries from U.S. In recent years, China has exerted its economic influence to achieve political goals, such as persuading El Salvador, the Dominican Republic, and Honduras to abandon diplomatic recognition of Taiwan. China's strategy in Latin America is primarily determined by economic considerations, and it has generally been reluctant to establish formal alliances with countries in the region. However, this passive attitude towards the defense of partner countries could negatively impact relations with those countries that might expect support from China in times of crises, such as war. However, President Trump's offensive towards Latin America has provided China with some military opportunities, just as European countries concerned about Russia's expansionist intentions have become major markets for U.S. weapons. Latin America is likely to become a profitable market for Chinese weapons. Venezuela has already purchased a variety of Chinese weapons, from riot control equipment to missiles and fighter jets, and China has been selling military equipment to Argentina, Bolivia, and Ecuador as well. Recently, the United States seems to be showing increasingly active interest in Latin America. As stated in the recently announced U.S. national security strategy, the Trump administration is seeking ways to realign America's global military power to address urgent threats in the Western Hemisphere. Therefore, it has cautiously built influence in Latin America over the long term. The Chinese leadership will closely monitor what events unfold there in the coming months. For China, Venezuela is a country right in the middle of the U.S. sphere of influence, a long-term source of oil, and a symbolic card in its anti-U.S. diplomatic strategy. China does not demand human rights, elections, or regime change. Instead, I ask just one thing. How much oil can you provide? Thanks to this pragmatic approach, the Maduro regime was able to breathe, even amidst international isolation. Additionally, Russia plays the role of a military guardian for Venezuela. Intervening in a more direct manner than China, Russia's objectives are clear arms sales, providing air defense systems and sending military advisors. Let's prevent the U.S. from intervening at will. Especially after the Ukraine war, Russia is trying to strengthen its ties with non-Western countries even more. Venezuela is a symbolic partner for Russia in countering the United States. It is a symbolic partner. Here, an important variable that shakes up the situation emerges. This is Guyana. Until just a few years ago, Guyana was a country that didn't have much presence, even in South America. However, the discovery of a massive offshore oil field in the Essequibo region of Guyana, along with large-scale investments from American oil companies and world-class economic growth, completely changed the situation. This gene has become a strategic asset for the United States and the West, and an enticing target for Venezuela to escape its crisis. Venezuela claims that the Essequibo region, which is effectively controlled by Guyana, is part of its territory. The Maduro regime aims to use this dispute to divert domestic discontent, outward stimulate nationalism, and pursue the tangible benefits of oil. The United States views Guyana as effectively a protectorate, and Venezuela come into direct conflict. In 2025, experts in international politics discussed three possible scenarios. First, a scenario where U.S. pressure intensifies, leading to internal fractures within the Maduro regime. Second, a scenario where low-intensity confrontations become prolonged, with the support of China and Russia. Third, a scenario where localized conflicts arise over the Guyana oil fields. In any case, tensions in the Western Hemisphere are likely to persist for the time being. This situation is connected by a single narrative, involving the power struggle over illegal economic resources for maintaining power and the attempt to restore American influence. Trump's focus is not on drugs or the democratization of Venezuela, but on oil. One of the first topics Obama discussed after being elected president of the United States was energy policy. This is because the United States is the world's largest oil consumer. With the midterm elections approaching, Trump, who needs to achieve various results, is expected to make efforts to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, even if he doesn't show it outwardly. Additionally, Trump claimed through his social media that many Canadians want to become the 51st state of the United States. This is a direct provocation of our ally Canada, while engaging in a war of nerves over the tariff issues between the two countries. Here, Trump stated, it doesn't make sense for the U.S. to provide over $100 million in subsidies to Canada, expressing the situation where the U.S. is running a trade deficit with Canada as a subsidy. If you were Xi Jinping or Putin, how would you respond to the current situation? A few days ago, Iran's Khamenei passed away, and China, which had been importing Iranian oil at a low price, has once again suffered a severe economic blow. North Korea's Kim Jong-un, prioritizing the survival of the regime, is likely to be extremely wary as he observes the collapse of the leadership in Venezuela and Iran. Given that the U.S. military's precision strike capabilities and capture operations have been proven, there is no choice but to cling even more to nuclear weapons, the only means of guaranteeing the regime's security. To deter unilateral or coalition military operations by the United States, we will make diplomatic efforts to dilute the justification for direct strikes by the United States. This is the conclusion. The most important point is that this attack has significantly reduced the likelihood of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons, and it has also constrained China's oil imports, which will likely have negative effects on the Chinese economy. While it may not be easy to collapse the North Korean regime all at once, like in Venezuela, or to eliminate a leader as in the case of Khamenei, it is clear that a strong warning has been sent to North Korea. It will not be easy for North Korea's nuclear weapons to fall into the hands of groups like Hezbollah or Hamas. Although the United States spent an enormous amount of money on this operation, I believe it has had the effect of addressing several issues and creating an opportunity for strategic recalibration. Therefore, I think the U.S. government did not miss what it considered the optimal timing for the attack and made use of it effectively. However, this attack will only strengthen Iran's internal unity, cause global oil prices to fluctuate, and leave the world economy in a dire state once again. I've shared various thoughts so far, and if you have any good opinions, please leave a comment. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe and like. The purpose of this channel is to provide wisdom to navigate a world of increasing uncertainty through deep insights and sharp analysis.
Thank you.